This will be the reading for the sign of Scorpio for the month of September 2026. The deck that I'm using is the Rider-Waite deck by Pamela Coleman Smith and Arthur Waite. And what I've done is I pulled, for each consecutive week, I've pulled 3 cards in each consecutive week and an overall energy card. Now, the overall energy card will in turn affect each of those cards that are pulled within the week. So it will tell the emotional element that is going into each consecutive week. So let's get going with the reading because it's going to be a long one. Put your feet up, grab the cat, the dog, a coffee, a hot chocolate, whatever it may be, because this is going to be a long listen. So we're going to start with your energy card. And the energy card you have is the Two of Wands, straight up. Now, Scorpio, that talks about you having to make 2 choices, a decision between 2 things, 2 invitations, 2 projects, 2 jobs, 2 colleges, 2 residents, even 2 ways of living. But you have this desire to go with something that is very familiar to you, okay? So maybe you're wanting to go to school and maybe you want to work part-time. So could talk about dividing your time between 2 jobs or maybe even 2 family or two friends, 2 children, if you have children. It does talk about you having to modify your plans to do with a spouse or even a partner at work, a partnership. But it does talk about each partner having to be an individual as well as part of a couple. So you're having to allow some freedom within your circumstances, also within your partner's circumstances. It does talk about prosperity and power. Don't misuse it, okay? Treat everyone equally. Expect cooperation and seek help from influential people. Get their feedback on your ideas, maybe even good job contacts that are coming up, exciting job opportunities and rewarding interactions. So within the whole month of September, you're going to be dealing with choices between 2 of everything. I mean, it'd be like going into a candy shop and saying, damn, which candy do I want when you have so many choices? So you're going to be dealing with a little bit of confusion and maybe even, turning to a more familiar type of endeavor, right? Wanting to go with what's tried and true instead of, venturing out against all odds, okay? So we're going to move into the first couple of days that first week. And money, there's money, 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 okay? It could talk about an inheritance. It could talk about someone gifting you with something that they value. It could be money, but it could be land, property, a car, jewelry, furniture, right? But it's something that they placed high value in. And that's in the first couple of days. So money's always good, yeah. In the middle couple of days of that first week, it talks about, holding a grudge, because you've got that 2 of Swords reverse. It talks about maybe you're holding a grudge towards someone or even a bias towards someone, or it could be vice versa, right? But it does talk about using your intuition rather than your logic to make a choice, okay? It does talk about rules breaking. Or rule breaking, possibly on your part. Maybe you're not wanting to be the tried and true, okay? You're wanting to change things up a bit. Now, it does talk about changed circumstances are going to remove the source of disagreement or even the need to compromise on something. People may take advantage of you, okay, or your skills, or monetarily in some way. It does talk about 2 people who want to reconcile, okay, but neither one wants to make the first move. Now, is that you, Scorpio? Is this a relationship that you pulled away from because you felt controlled in some way? So you're walking away from this dynamic. It could be a job. It could be a business. It could be a coworker at work. It could be a boss at work. Someone who was kind of like, wanting to get a little bit more from you than you were willing to give. Now, I just talk about unforeseen problems at an unconscious level, right? You're not really seeing this. You're not seeing the forest for the trees, okay? And it does say that you may be caught in the middle of a disagreement. Now, that could be a disagreement at work. It could be a disagreement in a familial aspect. It could be a disagreement between, who gets what and what goes to who in a circumstance where possibly someone has crossed, okay? Now, if you're wanting to join with someone, to, join forces with someone, to work with someone, to start a businessship with someone, okay? A business partnership, there's 2 people here that are just not compatible, and they never will be. So it might be best to just, kind of say, Let's just say your adieus, and what's meant to be will be, and what's not will not be, and be aware of that. So we're going to move into the last couple of days of that first week. Last couple of days of that first week, you're dealing with a fire sign individual. Leo, Aries, or Sagittarius, and it is a male energy, okay? It's a type of person who's very impulsive. They go after what they want. They're very fearless. They're very enterprising, okay? Maybe someone who has invented something. Maybe it's someone that you're wanting to start a business partnership with, okay? A relationship. Now, just talk about you becoming more active, getting involved in your life, perhaps getting more fit, focusing on exercise or focusing on your fitness in some aspect in your life, your health. Now, there is a large amount of money coming to, okay? And you're going to be highly self-reliant. But, you know, you're pretty competitive at this point in time. You are going to be expanding your social network. Maybe you're moving. Maybe you're going to school at a distance or moving your home at a distance, okay? But you are expanding in some way. Now, it does talk about romance, and there is a mutual attraction. You might be going to a past place to do something new with a new partnership, okay? It talks about possibly getting involved in service clubs, sports clubs, a new project that's coming into your life, but it's going to be with a close-knit group or an individual. It also talks about uniforms. Maybe, you know, getting a job where you're going to have to wear a uniform or where you're going to be performing the same type of activity on a daily basis. It could simply be getting involved in volunteer work and going every day to help out at, you know, a food pantry, something like that, okay? So volunteer work is very important to you in that first week. So we're going to move into the second week. First couple of days of second week, damn, you're finding out the truth about some situation or a person in your life, okay? There is talk about relationship issues, realistic, down-to-earth matters, okay? Everybody has to contribute in some way. And you might even be very hypercritical or hypersensitive at this point in time. And someone says the least little thing, you know, even in a text message, and you get hurt, okay? Those type of things. But it does talk about you're going to leave that by the wayside and you're going to return to clarity. You're going to find out the truth about a matter in your life. Now, it could be a health problem. It could be a health problem someone else is dealing with. Something that is in the early stage of development. And, you know, Scorpio, a hope for outcome, it may not happen, okay? So you have to be prepared for that and be aware. Not everything, you know, goes in the direction that you want it to go, okay? But it does talk about illusions that are lifting, and you're coming to terms with reality and how it really truly is. So as you're moving into the middle part of that second week, the middle couple of days, you know what you're doing. You got the Seven of Pentacles, okay? You know, and you're visualizing things, okay? You're taking the right steps. You're planning things step by step. And you're being very self-reliant. You're not putting up with crap from anyone. If you want to do something, you make a plan and you go ahead and do it. And you're going to enact that plan step by step. And it's going to be very successful. Now, you're going to go against mainstream. And most Scorpios I know, they don't play by the same book as everybody else, okay? And they do. They stand up for their personal values. And at this point in time, in the middle part of that second week, that's exactly what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to stand up for what it is that you want in your life. Now, it does talk about an unexpected turn of events. But it's not going to affect you negatively because this is a very positive card for you. Now, you might decide to do something completely different, okay, to achieve a goal that is more realistic or more sustainable in your life at this point in time. So you're going to change your venue. You're going to change how you go about doing things. So as you're moving into the last 2 days of that second week, you got all this energy, like that. You're like the Energizer Bunny, okay? You have all these multiple activities going on, and you know you're enjoying it. You're enjoying the busyness of it. You're enjoying the interactions with the people in your life, or even your community. You have the strength that you need to move forward, and you are going to be your own advocate. You're not going to put up with any crap. You're going to stand at the plate and say, this is what I want, and this is what I'm going to achieve. And Scorpio, you will achieve it. Yeah. You're uncovering a new meaning in your life, and you're getting involved in your community and in your life. You're not standing behind the door anymore and watching your life pass you by. You're getting involved. You're interested in everything, and that is spurring you on to more, to bigger, and to better. Third week, third week, Tower, straight up. Well, that in itself tells you just what the pictures. Be mindful of potential accidents. Be very careful working around electricity and water. You're changing your way of seeing things, okay? There's going to be dramatic events that take place, and there might even be a breakthrough of ideas on your part, but there are building tensions in a relationship or in an environment. There might even be some disruptions, maybe from, bad weather, maybe from some type of natural causes, okay? Disasters of sorts, flooding, whatever it may be. Now, it does say that you are going to be possibly cut loose from a situation. So you might be let go from a job or an event or even a volunteer job that you were getting involved in, where maybe they're changing venues or they're shutting down their doors, okay, closing their doors. But this unexpected change is not a bad thing. It's going to bring about a transformation in your life. So if you're let go from one thing, or you have to leave one scenario, one job, one circumstance, one event, one act of volunteerism, okay? Now, if you have to leave that, you're kind of thinking in your head, well, I enjoyed doing that. So I'm going to try to get focused on something else. I'm going to get involved in something else. And that's where this is headed. So that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Now, it does talk about you remembering your dreams, okay? Now, think about this. We're in that third week. First couple of days, that third week, and your intuition is on high alert. It's warning you of things. It's giving you the heads up before anybody else knows, right? Now, you may be going through a period of depression. Maybe you you like the job you were doing. You like the area you were in. You expected when you moved into a new level that you would be happier, and you're not. You're missing something. There's something missing. Now, it could talk about arguments also. It could talk about an overthrow of a government, oppression of some sort, natural causes, as I said, flooding, social causes, human causes, maybe even riots in your circle of energy, okay, or in your environment. And that's creating problems for you mentally. You're thinking, damn, I didn't sign up for this. Yeah. It also talks about family quarrels. People are not agreeing on things that are happening in their environment, in their homes, or in their relationships. And it's familial things, okay? It does talk about disappointment in school, maybe even in family issues. Maybe you're disagreeing with the way someone is living their life. And so, you're kind of kicking up a fuss. So it talks about an accident, talks about illnesses, or some type of loss that is going to bring about a drastic change. Now, you were in that second week, and, things were starting to look pretty good, stable, right? You were starting to stand up for yourself. And then in the third week, it's almost like your environment is like ruining it. It's like the things that are taking place in your environment are shaking that confidence that you had. So we're going to move into the middle 2 days of that third week. And if you're in an environment where there's chaotic circumstances, you kind of fall into it, right? Because it talks about impulsive words and actions. You're keeping them under control, but that volcano is building, okay? And it does talk about new pleasures. Pursuit of new pleasures isn't always for the best, right? It might leave you disappointed. Maybe you started a new relationship, a new job, a new living environment, and you're seeing things that are taking place in your environment that are creating those chaotic circumstances that you were trying to pull away from. But it does talk about you going through a period of emotional hardship because of something that is happening in your environment, okay? Now, you're able to make sense of change and crisis in your life. That's a type of strength that you have. You have that inner strength, okay? It also talks about the return of an old friend, or maybe you're returning to see an old friend or to a living environment where there are people from your past that you can reunite with, okay? And it does say that you're wanting stability, security, and serenity in your life. And you're wanting to return to those things, to a more secure situation, okay? Now, it does say that you will be going, you will be returning to a situation, an environment, a relationship, maybe even a home that you were in before, okay? And you're going to try to rebuild that security in your life. You're going to end this type of victimization that you've been dealing with in your life, where you feel like you're, a product of your environment. And if your environment is unstable, then your life is unstable, okay? So you're going to try to build on that and make it more balanced. Last couple of days of that third week, you have this strong desire to get the hell out of there, you just want out of there. But the circumstances are stopping you with this Fool card reversed, okay? You're learning new things, but you're being easily led. People are getting you to believe things readily, okay? You just want to belong, and so you're kind of falling into the pattern where you're being suckered in. Yeah. So it does talk about inexperience. It talks about you being a little naive, maybe even taking some senseless risks, okay? Now, you might put yourself down. You might, joke about your looks or your weight or your knowledge or your skills or even your environment. You put yourself down before other people do. Yeah. And stop that shit. But it talks about you being scared to be rejected, okay? You don't want to make a bad choice, and you don't want to look foolish. Listen, Scorpio, who cares? Who cares what other people think of what you are bringing into your life? It's your life. If that's something that you're standing strong on, then hold strong to it, okay? No, I'm not saying negative things. I'm saying, if you decide to become a vegetarian. That's something, a choice that you're going to make for your body, okay? I'm not talking about becoming a robber or a liar or a thief. I'm not talking about that kind of nonsense. I'm talking about healthy things that you're bringing into your life, that you're incorporating into your life, okay? So that's not a negative. Stand up for those ideals and those values. If you don't choose to be a drinker or a smoker or, a troublemaker, whatever it may be, then you hold on to your integrity, okay? So we are now going to talk about relationship skills, because I'm telling you, Scorpio, there are some issues taking place here where there are people in your circle of energy, in your environment, okay, who don't have the same level of relationship skills that you do. There are people who are controlling, people are placating, people who are wanting to control a relationship or a situation or even an environment. And you're not having no part of it. No way. Nope. Now, just talk about a road trip. So you're pulling away from those negative energies. You go, Scorpio, you go. You're going on a road trip, but the road trip might be delayed because of problems with your vehicles. So make sure that you're taking care of the needs of your mode of transportation, okay? Now, it does talk about you displaying a little bit of learned helplessness, where maybe you don't think that you have the wherewithal. Maybe you're going on a long trip. You're relocating at a long distance, okay? And you're a little scared. And so you're looking for, a little bit of guidance, right? Scorpio, you have all the talent and the knowledge that you need. So stop being so fearful of your life and grasp it with both hands. Yeah. Now, it does talk about someone in your life. Now, possibly you. Maybe you like to, act like the class clown. Maybe you like to have a little bit of humor thrown in your life. And it helps you feel comfortable around other people. You know what? We all act like a class clown sometimes. It doesn't matter. If it's bringing you into a place where you feel like you can release some tension by acting like a class clown, then hell, you go for it. You go for it, okay? But it also talks about inexperience in life, in work, in relationships, and maybe even looking for more self-awareness in those aspects in your life, okay? It does talk about missed opportunities that are coming up here. It also talks about wanting to build on your socialization skills, okay? Now, there might be someone that you're working with or you're taking care of or that is in your environment who is dealing with ADHD or autism, okay? Or maybe their communication style is based on that learned helplessness. And maybe you're dealing with them at this point in time. Okay, it's a new adventure, but there are going to be obstacles along the way. And part of them may be the fact that you're having to deal with someone in your environment who is dealing with emotional aspects in their life. Okay, so let us move into the last week, the very last week. And the first card you have is the Ace of Swords, and it is straight up. Damn. So things, situations, disagreements, everything's going to extreme, okay? Someone is challenging your idea, your identity, your view of yourself, okay? You see yourself differently than other people see you, but there is an intensity in behaviors, and it also talks about danger. It talks about justice. It talks about endings and finalities to relationships, situations, environments, even jobs. Maybe you're going to walk off a job. Maybe you've had enough of being taken advantage of and you're going to walk away. Maybe you've had enough of a relationship where you're being controlled in some way, whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually, psychologically, or financially, or even sexually, okay? But it does talk about a great passion, intense focus. You're not putting up with this shit no more. You're done. You're done. And you will, Scorpio, have the ability to summon great force or great strength if you need it. There's going to be intensity in emotions, beliefs, activities, your environment, your interactions. This could even talk about worldwide things that are happening that are affecting you in some way. You know, putting the fear of the Lord into you, okay? Talks about wars and skirmishes, riots, maybe even overthrow of governments or walkouts on the job. People are walking off the job because they're tired of not getting any security in their employment. It does talk about having to stand up for yourself, possibly in a job. Maybe that's why you're walking off the job, because you're not being treated with respect or equally. But it does talk about you having very strong opposing ideals and values towards something that you're working toward, or maybe you're working in, or maybe even your environment. Things are starting to change in your environment and you're disagreeing. So you have this strong need for independence, and knowing my Scorpios, you're going to get it. So as you're moving into the middle couple of days, oh, wait, hang on here. Yeah, the middle couple of days of that last week. You have the Nine of Pentacles reversed. So you might be finding it hard to focus, okay? You're having to be very creative in your business endeavors. And you know what? Success is going to come in time. Don't give up now. Don't give up just before you reach, you know, the end, okay? Before you win this race, like, don't give up halfway. Now, you might be having some concerns about a pet in that last week, and we're talking about the first couple of days of that last week. Now, think about it. If you're going on a long trip and you're taking a pet with you, the pet has to stop and get, you know, fresh air and have to pee and poop and eat and have a little bit of freedom from that anxiety of being cooped up in a car, right? If it's a long trip. So be aware of that. Now, just talk about you having to live modestly at this point in time. You know, hanging on to your money and being very frugal, okay? Take pleasure in the simple things. Watch the stars, listen to the birds, the fall colors, whatever it may be, okay? But it does say that in that last week, you're not willing to give up your personal freedom to be in a relationship or even in a job. You maybe you're being kind of held to the plate by your work, and they're saying, well, we need more hours. We want more hours from you put into the job. So we're not gonna give you a pay raise, but we want you to put more work in. Whatever. So it does talk about you working too much. You're exhausted. You're tired, okay? You want more time to yourself. You want more time to feel that freedom, that sense of freedom, okay? Now, you might be dealing with someone in the middle 2 days of that last week of September who has some type of dependence problems, okay? Dependency problems could be dependence on alcohol, drugs, a sexual dependence, an addiction toward gambling, okay? Or food, overeating. It could be someone who's addicted to prescription drugs. Learned helplessness, victimization, okay? And so you're dealing with all these issues in the middle part of that last week. As I said, first 2 days, we're also dealing with someone who had behavioral problems. And those behavioral problems might be based on some type of addiction, okay? So, and you're dealing with this. Now, I hope it's not you, and I don't see it being you. I see it being possibly a child or a young adolescent. So the last 2 days of that last week, you have the Hangman reversed. You are stubborn as hell, Scorpio. You are stubborn. You're not listening to reason, right? And it might even be someone in your circle of energy, like this person who has this dependency, and they're being very defiant. And you might even find yourself, allowing someone to bind you to a situation that is not conducive to your growth or to your success, okay? But it does talk about indecision. Yeah. Maybe you were trying to make a decision between like moving, starting a business of your own, going back to school. But at this point in time, it doesn't say that in the cards. It says, take your time. Take your time. Don't make a choice right now. Wait for a period of time, because right now, that's all you can do. Have patience. Yeah, have patience. The last couple of the days of that last week, if you're waiting for someone's behavior to change, they're not at that point. They're not ready to change yet, but they will. Give them time, okay? Now, if you're waiting to start a new business, to move at a distance, to pack up, or whatever it may be, to get a new job, to get a new career, it's not time yet. The good Lord will tell you when it's time, okay? And you will know intuitively, because Scorpio, your intuition is on red alert in this month of September. Now, legalities are hanging over your head, right? Don't get in any trouble. Don't get in any trouble. You're in a transition period, so it's important to kind of lay low and keep all your options open, okay? Now, it does talk about problems for children, maybe your children, or maybe there is, this transition phase. I mean, if you have children and if you moved at a distance, that transition may create problems for your children, right? So it might cause problems for your children. If you're in a marriage where perhaps it has dissolved and you have custody of the children, maybe there's going to be an issue with you moving across the country with your children, right? So there are some things that are taking place here in the last couple of days. Now, if you have lost your license, got a ticket, or you didn't renew your license in time, or there's an issue with your driver's license, okay? You may be getting it back. Just be patient. It's on its way. It's on its way. So stop worrying about it. It will come in its time. And just make sure that the paperwork is all done and that you have completed what you needed to complete. This could also stand for a child, young adolescents that maybe wanted to get their first license, and maybe they don't have the funds for it, or maybe they don't have the training for it, or the qualifications, or the skills, or maybe they failed the test, okay? Something like that might be taking place, but they might have got a ticket. Maybe they got a ticket for drunk driving. Maybe they had a little smell of alcohol on their breath and they got caught. And they're not going to get. So there's going to be issues with transportation for that individual. Now, it does say that at this point in time, someone is gaining a new sense of purpose. Now, is that this young person in your life, a family member, perhaps a daughter, a son, a cousin, a brother, a sister, someone who lost their license, and, you're helping them in some way, but you're noting that this addiction that they had has actually created havoc in their life. And so you might be their mentor or their guide in some way, okay? So be aware of that sometimes the problems revolve around the people around us, and you just need patience because they will find their balance, okay? It's about security, stability, and serenity. So that's the end of the reading, and I shall see you in October. And if you are going on a long trip or you're relocating, bon voyage. And I hope you have a very safe, healthy trip. Take care, my friends, and I shall see you in October. Namaste. Bye.